Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following. Indiana University's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, presenting Security Matters with tips for improving online security in 3 minutes or less. Main Source Bank, headquartered in Greensburg, Indiana, offering products and services to fit every stage of life. More information at mainsourcebank.com. Main Source, life needs a great bank. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Smithville Communications, serving Southern Indiana with high-speed fiber gigabit internet. Smithville Fiber Gigabit Technology. Tap the power.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on a special edition of Indiana Newsdesk. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act is the law in Indiana, but what does it do and what doesn't it do?
We've got a perception problem here because some people have a different view. And we intend to correct that.
Amid a firestorm of criticism, the governor this week directed lawmakers to clarify the language of the law.
And the right thing is to take bold action. It's not to put a Band-Aid on a bill which has caused a hemorrhage.
Ahead on Indiana Newsdesk, will the changes satisfy critics? And what damage has already been done?
We knew we would probably get some response, but to date we've had 13 calls, emails from people from around the country telling us that they have canceled trips here or that they're never coming here.
Plus, a legal expert joins us to explain how Indiana's law is different than the federal one that's been on the books for more than 2 decades. Complete coverage and a wrap-up of this week's other top stories right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Senator David Long perhaps said it best when, during a press conference yesterday, he described this week as providing humbling moments. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act, also known as RFRA, sailed through the legislature with little fanfare. There were some rallies and Democrats did offer some amendments, but it wasn't until Governor Mike Pence signed the legislation into law a week ago, Thursday, that the firestorm started to erupt. On Sunday, Pence went on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos to respond to the criticism.
This is not about discrimination. This is about empowering people to confront government overreach, George.
Though, on it, because your supporters say it would. And so yes or no, if a florist in Indiana refuses to serve a gay couple at their wedding, is that legal now in Indiana?
George, this is where this debate has gone with misinformation and frankly,
it's just a question, sir. Yes or no?
Well, there's been shameless rhetoric about my state and about this law and about its intention all over the internet. People are trying to make it about one particular issue, and now you're doing that as well.
Well, that sparked another outcry and forced the governor and the legislature to take swift action. State House reporter Brandon Smith explains what changes lawmakers made to the law this week.
On Tuesday, Governor Mike Pence directed lawmakers to pass legislation before the end of the week, making clear that RFRA does not allow discrimination.
I'm calling on the General Assembly to send me a bill that focuses on the issue here, that focuses on, frankly, the smear that's been leveled against this law and against the people of Indiana.
But Democrats quickly shot back, saying a clarification wasn't enough.
Because right now, if they're going to take a Band-Aid approach, there's not a lot of confidence that they're going to get it right. The only practical solution is to repeal the whole thing.
Among the Republican supermajority, that idea didn't have much support, and by the next day, GOP leaders had worked out the kind of language the governor was looking for. RFRA was amended to say the law does not allow anyone to refuse services to anyone for a host of reasons, including sexual orientation or gender identity.
Indiana is open for business. We welcome everyone. We discriminate against no one.
For the first time ever, the words sexual orientation and gender identity appear in the Indiana statute, or they will, after this law is passed, in the context of non-discrimination.
The legislature passed the change, and the governor gave it his approval, saying he believes resolving the controversy and making it clear that every person feels welcome and respected is best for Indiana. But the changes sparked another debate. Did the fix really solve anything?
There are advantages to doing it fast in terms of being able to, quote-unquote, move on and get the Final Four going, you know, let's get Indiana off the front page news, but doing it right is what Hoosiers elected us to do.
I think in this bill we have a strong positive statement that really does express the core of Hoosier belief.
I'm worried that the people of the state of Indiana are going to think that if we pass this, that it now is illegal throughout the entire state of Indiana to discriminate against persons based upon sexual orientation or gender identity. And this document, this so-called fix, let's be crystal clear, let's be honest with the people, this does not do that.
The solution is very simple. Repeal this law. Secondly, put clear civil rights protections in place.
But that's not something Governor Pence supports. He says giving LGBTQ protected status is an issue separate from RFRA. GOP leaders say they're open to the discussion, but wouldn't commit to debating it next year, saying their focus is getting through this legislative session.
The debate is still playing out in other states. In Arkansas, the governor this week was watching what was happening here in Indiana and took that into consideration when the legislature there sent him a similar religious freedom bill. In a press conference, he acknowledged the concerns on both sides of the debate.
The issue has become divisive because our nation remains split on how to balance the diversity of our culture with the traditions and firmly held religious convictions. It has divided families, and there is clearly a generational gap on this issue.
With that in mind, Governor Hutchinson sent the bill back to the legislature, asking them to make some changes that would make it better mirror the federal RFRA law. And yesterday, he signed the amended version. These examples beg the question, what's next? What are the political, legal, and social implications of the week's events? Indiana University political science professor Marjorie Hershey and IU law professor Deborah Whitus join us now to sort all this out. I think, Deborah, we need some kind of concrete example of how Indiana's RFRA law now, what can you do now that the law is in effect?
Well, so one thing is churches or other religious nonprofits can still decide that they don't want to provide services to individuals, and they could assert a RFRA defense and a claim that that was unlawful discrimination. For-profit businesses can't do that anymore, but nonprofit religious organizations still can. The other thing is individuals who may feel that they don't want to comply or can't comply with a general law for other religious reasons that have nothing to do with discrimination can still assert those kinds of claims. So, for example, we've heard a lot of talk about a Muslim prisoner who wanted to be able to grow a beard because that was core to his religious beliefs, and that RFRA permitted him to make that choice because the government couldn't come up with a good enough reason why he should not be able to grow a beard.
So was this law needed? We seem to be hearing that a lot. That seems to be one of the main questions.
Well, I took the position and still believe that the protections under the First Amendment and Indiana's analog to the First Amendment are sufficient to protect religious freedom. It is important, but so are some of these other values. You know, I think that regarding RFRA, the amended version balances those concerns pretty well. As we heard in the introduction, I think there still is need for a statewide law making clear that discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity is unlawful.
Now, Marjorie, we saw that there was an amendment issued before all this came down, but they didn't pass it. Why? That first time around.
I think that it's important to keep this in a political as well as a legal context. I think that this wasn't really a problem in search of a solution. This was a solution in search of a problem. The political issue of same-sex marriage has been a very effective one for some political leaders in generating activism, political contributions to campaigns, and in helping make the careers of some candidates who are particularly attractive to the evangelical segment of the Republican Party. And I think that's what this was mostly about.
Well, many people were saying that RFRA was being implemented due to the fact that the Supreme Court essentially struck down Indiana's ban on same-sex marriage. But when we asked Governor Pence, or when he was asked at the press conference, here's what he said.
Well, I think the more relevant event was the Hobby Lobby case by the Supreme Court. which is a case in point of the value of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It really is.
So just as a little bit of a recap, the Supreme Court ruled Hobby Lobby did not have to abide by the Obamacare birth control mandate. And so Deborah, did this RFRA really change anything now? Well, or is it a little bit of both between the Hobby Lobby and that ban on same-sex marriage?
Well, I would definitely say it's both in terms of sort of the political reality of what brought it to the fore in Indiana right now. What Hobby Lobby did, though, was open the door to for-profit companies claiming religious beliefs should excuse them from laws like the birth control mandate. And before the Hobby Lobby decision, I think many assumed that for-profit companies just couldn't make those kinds of religious claims. So that did change the context as well. And Marjorie, the governor's really been under a lot of criticism, but he's fired back as well. Where does he go now in terms of being the mayor, or being the governor of Indiana, and then even further political aspirations after that?
Well, I think where he hopes to go as the governor of Indiana, as a Republican presidential candidate for the United States. In order to do that, given the fact that we have probably close to 20 people who are running for the Republican nomination in 2016, the best way is to capture some segment of the Republican primary electorate in early primary states. Evangelical Christians are a large portion of the Republican primary electorate in the Iowa caucuses, the first in the nation, in the South Carolina primary, which is one of the early primaries. And my sense is that Governor Pence had hoped that this would bring him kind of being seen as a champion of that group. What's happened this week doesn't seem to have been very favorable toward his aims.
All right, well, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate your thoughts. Opponents of RFRA say clarifying the language of the legislation isn't enough to undo all the harm it's caused to Indiana's reputation. The bill sparked protests and boycotts throughout the nation. As Barbara Harrington reports, some are worried the damage will take a lot longer to restore Indiana's image than it did to tear it down.
If not now, there you go. Tell me when, and it goes like this.
The Hoosiers at this Bloomington rally feel like they've been here before.
My sister said to me last time we were talking about it, how did this happen? How did this happen?
It's been less than a year since a court decision made same-sex marriage legal in the state of Indiana. But once again, members of the LGBTQ community and their allies say they're forced to fight for their rights.
The people of this country won't have it. We're not living in the 1930s anymore, and you know, rich white men are just going to have to get used to it. Suck it up.
They're calling on legislators to go further and repeal RFRA. Some opponents say even with a legislative fix, the bill doesn't do enough to protect same-sex couples and does damage to the entire state.
I think they should have listened to the people of Indiana and before they voted, and the governor should have thought about the implications of this for our state, for visitors to our state.
Just 1 week after Governor Mike Pence signed the bill, his hometown of Columbus is already feeling its impact.
We are concerned about the perception of Indiana and certainly of visiting Indiana and our community.
The city's heard from more than a dozen groups or individuals who are canceling trips to Columbus because of the legislation, or vowing never to come to Indiana.
The first one was the day after the legislation had been signed. We received notice from Palm Springs, California. A group of 30 people were coming to see the architecture in Columbus. They were going to spend a week, spend some real money, affect jobs by that cancellation.
If more cancellations come in, they could put a dent in the $260 million Columbus makes on tourism every year. Even more concerning for businesses like La Mode Salon, the potential long-term effects of RFRA.
It's scary for our state. I feel like our economy is going to suffer because of it. And, you know, we have a big Fortune 500 company here in Columbus, Cummins, and they've even made comments about not expanding, and that would be just detrimental. It'd be terrible for our economy, for our town.
Several major companies condemned the original RFRA language, saying it was bad for business. Among them were Apple, Cummins, Angie's List, the NCAA, and dozens of others. The governors of New York and Connecticut even put bans on state officials traveling to Indiana. Some say the timing of the legislation couldn't be worse, specifically for the city of Indianapolis. Indy will host the NCAA Final Four tournament this weekend, bringing tens of thousands of people into town.
As it stands now, perception is reality, and the perception is Indianapolis is no longer welcoming. And when you're in the business of marketing a city, that impedes on your ability to drive tourism.
But some say the tournament also provides a unique opportunity to take the national spotlight and show the rest of the world what Indiana is really about.
We firmly believe that there's a hunger with our hospitality community to prove the critics wrong, to showcase, not through words but through actions, that Hoosier hospitality is alive and well, and that no matter what piece of paper has been signed, Hoosier hospitality remains.
To talk more about the long-term implications of RFRA, we're joined by Indiana Equality Action spokesperson Chris Paulson. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Your organization has been a staunch opponent of this law from the beginning. Does the recent language satisfy your concerns?
The recent language fixes the issue with RFRA itself. It really does nothing to move LGBT rights forward in the state, though.
And is there potential for still discrimination?
Yes, there's 12 municipalities in Indiana that have human rights ordinances. A small percentage of the state is covered by those. The rest is not. So there's a great opportunity for discrimination in most of the state.
We're still hearing some businesses like Angie's List are not accepting the new language and saying they're not going to continue their operations or building on here in Indiana. Is there a turning point in the gay community that they should start supporting these businesses and saying it's okay?
I think the gay community and our allies are looking for full equality in Indiana, both on basis of gender identity and sexual orientation. And we're glad that those companies are supporting that, and more companies will come out and support that also. I think we've kind of reached a point of some healing, but we need to keep moving forward or we will start sliding back.
And I believe you're speaking of, we mentioned that Republican lawmakers say they'd be open to discussing whether or not sexual orientation should be put into the state Bill of Rights statute next year. What would need to happen to get that through?
It's going to have Republican support, obviously. We're in a supermajority with Republicans. We will work with the legislature and national groups, a lot of the local corporations also, and help get that legislation pushed through.
Does your group still plan to be back at the State House next year to do just that?
We'll be back at the State House where there's a march tomorrow in Indianapolis. We will remain very vigilant in making sure that the legislature stays true to their word and pushes equality for everyone forward.
Some people were surprised about gender identity being added as well. Is that separate from sexual orientation? They may not understand the difference between.
Yes, definitely. Gender identity is separate from sexual orientation. Gender identity is covered in some of those human rights ordinances, the 12 I spoke about, but not all of them. So that has been covered in some areas. In most areas, it's not covered.
So is Indiana's reputation permanently scarred, or will Indiana be able to make some type of rebound on this?
I think until we have full equality, we're still going to be in the spotlight, definitely. But we'll move towards full equality, and I think then full healing will take place.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
While RFRA dominated the news this week, there were some other headlines. The effort to intensifying to stop the HIV epidemic that's affected more than 80 people in southeastern Indiana. A comprehensive HIV clinic that's offering everything from testing to treatment opened in the small town of Austin, Indiana, where the outbreak started. As Gretchen Frazee reports, health officials say they're happy for the help now, but there's a lesson to be learned about the consequences of ignoring drug problems in the state's rural counties.
It's almost 8 o'clock. Most people are just getting to work, but Dr. Will Cook has already put in a full day. He just finished an emergency room night shift, but there's still plenty of work to be done.
It's definitely there.
He and his team at Foundation's Family Medicine in Austin are preparing for what will become a weekly HIV clinic. When patients walk in the door, a nurse asks some basic questions about drug use and sexual behaviors. Then the nurse administers a preliminary drug test.
You take it, you hand it to them, and what they do is we put them in their mouth.
It takes about 20 minutes to get the results, and it's 99% accurate. Whether people test positive or negative, they talk with a nurse about HIV, addiction treatment options, the county's new needle sharing program, and safe sex practices.
Just one moment, please.
The clinic is possible because of an executive order the governor signed last week. It authorizes a needle sharing program in Scott County and allocates State Department of Health resources to the area, resources local officials have been asking for more than a decade.
Ever since I opened my practice in 2004, it was obvious that there was a problem with drug use here. Been asking for help for a long time. So in some ways we've forgotten rural America, and we tend to look the other way.
Cook and other health coalitions applied for multiple grants and tried to get the attention of state officials, but they were consistently denied funding.
It seemed to us here that it was probably a matter of time before HIV set in, but we never realized it was going to be as bad as it is.
Local agencies haven't sat idle, though. In 2011, the county got a wake-up call when 19 people overdosed on Opana, the prescription opioid that's been linked to the recent HIV cases.
We did do a lot of environmental strategies, which did address this. But we begin to see that people who were once getting a lot of Opana from their local physicians through our local pharmacies, that was curtailed. But somehow they're getting it from somewhere.
It's a lot easier for us to fight methamphetamines, which we've kept down, heroin, which we've kept down. But when you're talking about a legal substance that's only illegal, when you sell it, that's very difficult to fight.
Scott County law enforcement plan to continue cracking down on Opana use, but they're also hoping to do more on the treatment side.
We are looking now at treating everyone that's HIV positive in the jail, testing and offering treatment for that. Again, there's a funding mechanism that we're hoping to get from the state to help us with the tremendous expense of these medications.
Back at Foundation's Family Medicine, Dr. Cook says his clinic is finally getting the resources it needs. But the governor's executive order is only effective for 30 days, and health officials warn more resources need to be allocated to other counties where the virus is spreading.
These problems exist all across Indiana. You know, we may just be the canary in the coal mine, hopefully maybe a wake-up call that we can't forget about any American.
About 30 people showed up to Foundation's Family Medicine's first HIV clinic Tuesday. They plan to offer free HIV testing every day of the week and will host a full clinic every Tuesday. The state of Indiana might have to pay out more money in attorneys' fees and civil liability damages in connection with the 2011 State Fair stage collapse. The Indiana Court of Appeals this week struck down a lower court ruling that said the company in charge of the stage setup could not shift its liability onto the state. That means the lower court has to revisit its decision and take new arguments into account before issuing another ruling. 7 people died in the stage collapse and dozens were injured. A Senate committee passed an amended version of a bill Monday that would regulate Indiana's high-fenced hunting industry. The bill would regulate deer hunting preserves, fees, and setting up licensing requirements. It would also address concerns about chronic wasting disease making its way into Indiana.
Only deer that come from deer farms located in Indiana, those would be the only deer that could then be brought into the hunting preserves.
But opponents of the bill say the disease is a product of the captive deer industry. A state court of appeals panel ruled earlier this year the Department of Natural Resources doesn't have the authority to ban the hunting preserves, which it attempted to do in 2005. The bill now heads to the Senate floor. A measure that would allow the death penalty in cases where someone is beheaded is moving to the full House for consideration. Current law only allows the death penalty if the body is dismembered after death. A committee unanimously approved the measure. Another death penalty expansion proposal would have allowed the death penalty for school shootings or shootings during worship services. The committee chairman could still call a vote on the idea, but decided not to this week after the head of the Public Defender Council raised concerns about the vagueness of the proposal and its legality. Duke Energy and the state of Indiana are partnering with Southern Indiana's Battery Innovation Center in hopes of finding an effective way to store renewable energy. The Innovation Center plans to use the $1 million investment to build 5 microgrids that include all the hardware and software required for the off-site generation, storage, and management of solar and wind power. The backup power is stored in lithium batteries. It will likely best suit companies and schools primarily to be used in case of emergency. Testing is scheduled to begin this fall, and the groups are currently searching for 2 schools interested in signing up. And the Hoosier State consistently ranks among the worst for individual well-being. A new report Gallup released this week ranks Indiana among the top 10 states for mood-altering medication use. According to the report, nearly a quarter of Hoosiers claim to use prescription or illegal drugs regularly. Some medical professionals say that's because doctors are too quick to write prescriptions. And that's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following: Indiana University's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, presenting Security Matters with tips for improving online security in 3 minutes or less. Main Source Bank, headquartered in Greensburg, Indiana, offering products and services to fit every stage of life. More information at mainsourcebank.com. Main Source, life needs a great bank. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Smithville Communications, serving Southern Indiana with high-speed fiber gigabit internet. Smithville Fiber Gigabit Technology. Tap the power.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.